a code red for humanity. Curb emissions and dramatically reduce consumption or face a world that is fundamentally different.
When Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green," I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, 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 blah.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East Talk.
Hello, this is Zero Carbonista, Series 3, The Sky's the Limit. I'm Ian Collins, and welcome to the #1 environmental podcast. This is fast becoming the oracle of all things green, the man helping to shape the global agenda from the front bench is Dale Vince, lifelong environmentalist and entrepreneur, the owner of Ecotricity, and, of course, the chairman of Forest Green Rovers. Morning, Dale.
Yeah, morning, Ian. It's been a fun week so far, I have to say.
Well, there's been a budget, and they've addressed everything green, so COP's cancelled, no problem, nothing to see here. We all move on with a nice, clean world.
We couldn't be better set up for COP, really, could we, in global leadership with the budget we've just had.
Yeah, what did you make? I mean, I thought the interesting thing was that the idea that you would kind of introduce any kind of break on flying, I thought I'd misheard it.
It was madness. It was the anti-climate budget, wasn't it? Cheaper to fly, cheaper to buy petrol and diesel, and cheaper to drink. That's not a climate issue, but they're the three headlines I saw.
Yes.
Fly, drive, and drink, and it's all cheaper. Yeah. You know, and yet we can't have cheaper solar panels. We can't have cheaper home insulation. We've still got a coal mine being opened and a £20 billion road program and new drilling in the North Sea. All of that background is still there. And we're, 2-3 days away from COP now, I think it is. You know, I mean, what place are we in? We want the world to come together and do bold things. Johnson has said that, and they're going to come here and say, well, you say one thing, but you very much do another.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? So I don't know how many other, if you were to look around the world, would we find those inconsistencies in, Germany and Italy and France and the like?
No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't even find them in Australia. And they came out with the most stupid net zero plan this week also, actually.
I mean, 3090 or something.
They're not alone. But at least they aren't banging on about leading the world and fighting the climate crisis and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think at least they know where they are. Their plan is foolish. It relies on technology that doesn't exist. I mean, they think they can carry on producing fossil fuels. I mean, that's the madness of it. This is a net zero plan that doesn't give up fossil fuels. Wow.
Yeah, for another 40 years.
Yeah.
So, hang on. So have they not read a newspaper over there?
Even then, I didn't read that they plan to give up fossil fuels in 2050. They're saying by 2050 they'll get to net zero and still be producing fossil fuels.
Yeah. Our first story taps into this. Scientists expressed doubt that the Glasgow Climate Change Conference will be successful, and there seems to be a slightly growing body of concern from areas of the world of science.
Yeah, but I think it's a political issue. I don't know how scientists can divine that unless they're psychologists, let's say. But, we've had our own government this week. Several different government ministers have come out and said, COP's going to be difficult. Do you know what I mean? Johnson himself has been saying, very low chance of success. He was telling a bunch of school kids that, I think. I'm sure they probably raised their eyebrows at him and thought, yes, Johnson, why is that? Why is it not going to be a success? What have you been doing the last 6 months? And what kind of budget did we just have in Britain? And, where are the policies to fight the climate crisis? I mean, I think COP could very well be a failure, but the failure isn't about science. It's about politics. It's about the leaders of the world actually biting this bullet and saying, right, here's a serious zero carbon policy that matches the science.
Absolutely right. I think this time next week we'll be broadcasting, of course, from COP. You'll be there. I'm quite excited actually because all of this is now going to be flushed out for real, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's going to be good to know where we stand. We've a lot of will it, won't it, COP be a success or not, that kind of stuff. We know it's pivotal, super important. Our government have just been messing about. I think they've let us and the world down because, we're supposed to be running this thing and coordinating the whole world in preparation for COP. The big stuff should have happened before now. We put our zero carbon plan out last week. The Aussies put theirs out this week. There's not much between them actually in terms of seriousness. I'm hoping the big guns, the US and the EU, come and save the day. China and Russia aren't coming, of course. All the ingredients are there for it to be a bit of a flop, which is a shame.
Here's when you think about environmentalists that are leading the way, I mentioned you at the beginning of this about sort of agenda setting and the like. You think of Greta Thunberg, you think of David Attenborough. There's another name to add to that list now, and that is Mike Graham, because Chaz on Twitter has picked up on this. What did you make of Mike Graham's outburst about concrete this week? I mean, there we are all wondering what's renewable and what we can use and how to save the planet. And Mike Graham informed us that you can grow concrete. So,
I mean, I love this. I watched the clip. It's only about a minute long. And you've got Mike facing off with a spokesperson from Insulate Britain. And, he was classic Mike, right up in his face about what he does for a living. That's how he kicked off. Well, what do you do for a living? And he's like, well, I'm a carpenter. And Mike said, well, that's not very good, is it? You have to cut down trees. And he's like, well, it's regenerative, because trees grow. And Mike's straight in with, but you can grow a lot of things. You can grow concrete. And it's like, and the bloke just looked. His face didn't move, and Mike sat there. I think it dawned on him what a stupid thing he'd said, and he froze for like 20 seconds. Then he said, "Right, bye."
That was the end of it.
That was the end of it.
And what's funny about it is it's had about 12 million views. This and Mike's kind of in a great way owned it and decided that he's not going to shun away from it.
No.
He'll retweet it and kind of. He's now speaking to scientific experts who can just about form an argument that you might be able to grow something that some people would call concrete one day.
Seriously, that's fabulous. And Talk Radio have been putting money behind it. They've been putting advertising spend behind getting this clip out in the world. So they like it.
Absolutely right. Here's another headline. Government's chief scientific advisor says eat less meat to save the planet. This was Patrick Vallance, of course, who made the point that he said it's rather simple. Eat less meat, take fewer flights. And you've been saying this for years.
Yeah, absolutely. Two of our big three, energy, transport and food.
Yeah.
And, the government pulled it out of the net zero policy last week as well, didn't they? There was advice in there that said we've got to eat less meat to fight the climate crisis. And it got published and then pulled, which is just a weird thing to do.
Yeah. Very strange. It's good to hear Patrick Vallance making these points, though.
Yeah, I mean, whenever serious people make these points, I think it helps, scientific, medical people, and economists, of course. There was a big intervention from Lord Stern this week, looking back at his seminal report from 15 years ago that said it would be cheaper to fight the climate crisis than to suffer it. Yep. And he came out and said, actually, we underestimated the cost of the climate crisis back then. It's even worse. And we just need 2 to 3% of GDP invested, not spent. It's a different way to look at it, in fighting the climate crisis. And, job done.
It's interesting that in the same week, Rishi Sunak gave an interview with Sky News, and he said, I'm not telling people to eat less meat.
Yes, yeah. And actually, he only sees green measures as a cost, not an investment. It's an incredible attitude. And of course, he's the guy that said, well, let's make it cheaper to fly in Britain because it's such a big country. You really need to fly, and let's make petrol and diesel cheaper because it just makes sense. Then that it does.
It's kind of, it is parallel universe territory, isn't it? It's Black Mirror territory where you'd think, hang on a sec. So, I mean, it would be bad if we weren't hosting COP26. We're the freaking hosts of it. So, I mean, it's not a good look, whatever way you cut this one.
No, but this is a government that can absolutely fly in the face of reality, isn't it? This is the government that continues to tell us Brexit is this most amazing opportunity. We've got gaps on supermarket shelves, shortage of agricultural workers and of drivers. Yep. We've got a 15% decrease in imports and exports in the last 12 months due to Brexit. We've got no trade deals to replace what we've lost with Europe. And they continue to say it's an amazing opportunity. And Rishi Sunak said, we're entering the age of optimism, which is, of course, true in a sense, because all we get from our government is optimism.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I mean, the delivery of the optimism is a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah.
This in from Ryan, who says, Dale, our gas boiler is just being condemned. I need to get something installed before winter. I do like that where
serious, doesn't it?
When an inanimate object is condemned, there's always something vaguely amusing about it. But clearly not for Ryan, because they need to get something installed. Currently, there's a 3-month delay on heat pumps. But they can install a gas boiler in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What would you do, says Ryan? It's a good question.
I'd put a gas boiler in, and I know that will make quite a few environmentalists kind of pull their hair out and call me crazy. That's my friend George Monbiot, by the way. But what you can do, wait 3 months for something that's going to cost, I don't know, £6,000, £7,000, £8,000.
Yeah, sure.
That's going to raise your energy bills. I mean, the whole heat pump program is a foolish mistake. Green gas has to come. So anybody putting a boiler in now, instead of a heat pump, I think is it's just going to be future proofed because green gas.
Well, I was going to say, because if green gas is coming anyway, that will be your boiler is really just the delivery point of the gas, isn't it? So it will be able to still cope with that, whereas your heat pump will be shagged, to coin the phrase.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm going to leave that there.
I think so. Oranges are a luxury now, says the Welsh climate minister. Did you see this story?
I think they don't grow in Wales, do they?
I didn't think so. Buying fruit and veg out of season should be seen as a luxury in future, according to the Welsh climate minister.
I think it's a fair point. We've become spoilt in the last decade or so with a range of things on offer in supermarkets, kind of completely out of seasonal stuff from any part of the world where the sun happens to be shining. And of course, it comes with a big environmental cost. Although I must say, I'm reminded that less than 1% of the carbon footprint of all food is down to food miles. Actually, what you eat is more important than where it comes from.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So the food miles is not as important.
No, it's not. It's not. We do kind of tend to, get anxiety,
don't we?
Yeah, we get anxiety. We say, if it's flown in, it must be bad, or if it came on a boat from a long way away, whichever. But when you tot it up, less than 1% of the carbon footprint of food is from the distance that it travelled.
Here's another point. Why does the government keep ignoring tidal energy products? I mean, you've talked about lots of alternative ways to energize a nation, Dale, but I would imagine you would concur with that headline.
Yeah, I really don't understand, particularly tidal lagoons offshore. This is where you compound an area of water with a rock wall and, it fills up on a high tide, generating power that way in, and then you let it out on a low tide and you generate power again. It's predictable for 100 years in advance. So it's a predictable form of renewable energy, which is a big part of the answer. And instead, we've got a government that just wants to spend untold billions on nuclear fission and more research into nuclear fusion, which is never coming, and talks up carbon capture, which is monstrously expensive and always will be, just inherently by the nature of it. I don't understand why our government doesn't say, well, let's fund a pilot project. Let's see how this tidal lagoon stuff, for example, could work. And will it?
Is anybody onto this? I mean, we could talk about it all day, but is there anybody seriously onto this?
We've got a project that we're partnered with somewhere up on the northwest coast of England, and it's a completely feasible thing. Cheaper than nuclear, faster than nuclear, cleaner than nuclear, safer than nuclear, and pretty predictable and controllable. But no traction. It does need support in the same way that nuclear does, but not as much. Okay. I mean, we've got a government that just aren't listening, but we can see that from the budget and from the stuff they do and they don't do. Do you know what I mean? This is a government that are not interested in the green agenda at all.
Lisa on Twitter, good luck at COP26. Hope your message gets heard loud and clear. And Claire on Facebook says, hi, Dale, coming to see you speak next Friday night at the Vegan Society and the Blue Dot event in Glasgow. Will you sign my copy of Manifesto if I bring it?
Yes, of course I will.
Of course you will. You would never. You mentioned that. No, I won't.
Yeah.
I refuse.
No, I've done enough of that. I'm not signing anymore. No.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think who is it that said this week they don't sign? Paul McCartney said he stopped signing stuff.
Oh, that's mean.
He said he'd rather have a picture taken with people.
Oh, he's gone modern. Selfies. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Are you looking forward to COP then, Dale? It's going to be a few days there. I mean, you said at the beginning of this, you can sort of sense a little bit of maybe this won't pan out as it should do, but are there still, as Rishi might say, a point of optimism?
Yeah, we could definitely be optimistic. I think all the signs from our government are to get us ready for failure, which I think is the most likely outcome. Certainly at least an underwhelming success. Something will be described as a success, which really won't be. That's also a probable outcome. Am I looking forward to it? In a way, yeah. I think there'll be some good opportunities to communicate. I'm going to do some work with the BBC around that, for example. And I think with you guys, hopefully talk radio, all kinds of people. So it's a chance to communicate. That's really why I'm going.
Absolutely. Have a cracking week, Dale. We'll speak next week from Glasgow.
Nice one. Thanks, Ian. See you there.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget, of course, you can follow this podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Leave a review there as well. Make sure you follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince and facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero Carbon
East Off.